In March 2025, Apple loaded cargo planes in India with $2 billion worth of iPhones. They were chartering flights to move the devices into the US market, days before a new round of tariffs on Chinese-made goods could take effect. By the second quarter, the impact of that supply chain maneuver materialized in the data. China operates from a deeply entrenched position with a $19.2 trillion GDP, while India enters the field at roughly $4.2 trillion. Yet the momentum favors the challenger. International Monetary Fund projections place India's economic growth at a rapid 6.6%. By 2026, India is set to contribute 17% of total global real GDP growth, overtaking the United States' share. The title of global factory is up for grabs as international supply chains decouple. But as India steps up to claim the position, they are navigating an economic battlefield built and defended by their primary rival. India's economic engine runs almost entirely on its own people. Private final consumption expenditure accounts for nearly 61% of India's GDP, providing a massive internal buffer against external trade shocks. That consumer base is uniquely young. India's median age sits under 29, yielding a rapidly expanding workforce, just as China's population ages past a median of 40, actively shrinking its available labor pool. To harness that young workforce, the Indian government rolled out production-linked incentive schemes, or PLI. These programs directly tie state subsidies to a manufacturer's export performance, offsetting the higher initial logistics costs of setting up local operations. The subsidies are working. Tata and Foxconn have rapidly expanded their footprint, absorbing existing factories and building massive new facilities to scale local assembly. India's strategy leverages the sheer gravity of its domestic market. By offering access to hundreds of millions of new middle-class consumers, the state incentivizes multinational corporations to anchor their supply chains permanently inside the country. Across the border, Beijing is executing a massive defensive response. The Chinese state is doubling down on industrial policy to maintain absolute supremacy over high-tech manufacturing sectors. They are operating under the severe pressure of involution. Confronting a saturated domestic market and a contracting real estate sector, local governments and state banks are subsidizing factories to produce goods far beyond what their internal market can absorb. This chart shows the countries with the highest share of global manufacturing output. China accounts for nearly a third of all global manufacturing value added, allowing their factories to achieve per-unit cost declines that dispersed global competitors simply cannot match. To keep those factories running, China exports the excess. In 2025, they flooded the global market with advanced manufactured goods, including electric vehicles, batteries, and solar panels, generating a record $1.19 trillion trade surplus. This dynamic, termed China Shock 2.0, places immediate pressure on the global south. By exporting sophisticated technology at artificially low prices, Beijing captures market share and suppresses the industrial capacity of emerging economies before they can scale. Which brings us back to India's iPhone triumph. While Indian workers assemble the finished devices, they rely heavily on specialized midstream components, displays, batteries, and semiconductor chips, imported directly from Chinese suppliers. Every smartphone assembled in Chennai deepens India's reliance on Chinese input materials. This structural dependency has trapped India in a staggering $116 billion bilateral trade deficit with the very nation it is trying to outcompete. Breaking this trap requires navigating specific supply chain choke points. In critical sectors from clean energy to electronics, Chinese firms dominate the upstream production of high-purity polysilicon, solar wafers, and battery precursors. To achieve actual industrial sovereignty, policymakers must execute a dual de-risking strategy. India has to decouple its midstream supply chains from Chinese monopolies, while simultaneously protecting itself against sudden, unpredictable tariff threats from the United States. Standard import tariffs will not close the gap alone. Moving up the value chain requires securing alternative critical mineral sources and deploying patient, market-smart capital to build domestic processing facilities over several years. When China scaled its manufacturing base in the 1990s and 2000s, it enjoyed an era of open globalization and massive foreign investment. India is attempting that exact same climb today, but doing so in a heavily protected and highly fragmented world economy. India is forced to industrialize under active siege, fighting to establish a foothold against a dominant incumbent that routinely weaponizes its export controls to maintain structural leverage. The clock is running. Demographers estimate India has a strict 30-year window to fully employ its youth bulge and execute the kind of structural transformation China achieved over the previous 3 decades. The victor in this unseen supply chain conflict will secure deep structural leverage over the energy transitions, the telecommunications grids, and consumer markets of the 21st century. India is pushing aggressively upward, leveraging its demographic dividend and massive internal demand to carve out a new global manufacturing hub. Meanwhile, China is entrenching its position, utilizing immense scale and state directed capital to ensure its production ecosystems remain the unavoidable center of global trade. India possesses the raw momentum to become the next factory of the world. Their true test is building that factory, while the current owner deliberately floods the foundation with subsidized overcapacity.